Hey everybody, we're going to finish 2 Samuel tonight. Thanks for joining me. This is chapter 21. The Gibeonites were avenged. During the reign of David, there was a famine for 3 successive years. So David sought the face of the Lord. The Lord said, "It is on account of Saul and his blood-stained house. It is because he put the Gibeonites to death." Okay, so there's a famine in the land because of Saul's iniquity. The king summoned the Gibeonites and spoke to them. Now the Gibeonites were not a part of Israel, but were survivors of the Amorites. The Israelites had sworn to spare them, but Saul, in his zeal for Israel and Judah, had tried to annihilate them. That doesn't sound all bad. His zeal for Israel. David asked the Gibeonites, "What shall I do for you? How shall I make atonement?" Oh, okay, so obviously it is a bad thing. Okay. How shall I make atonement so that you will bless the Lord's inheritance? The Gibeonites answered, "We have no right to demand silver or gold from Saul or his family, nor do we have the right to put anyone in Israel to death. What do you want me to do for you?" David asked. They answered the king, "As for the man who destroyed us and plotted against us so that we have been disseminated and have no place anywhere in Israel, let 7 of his male descendants be given to us to be killed." 7 of their male servants be given. Let 7 of his male servants be given to us to be killed, and their bodies exposed before the Lord Gibeah of Saul, the Lord's chosen one. So the king said, "I will give them to you." I think the Gibeonites might be the ones that was that the Jebusites? I'm kind of losing track. I'll have to just look into that. The king spared Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, because of the oath before the Lord between David and Jonathan, son of Saul. But the king took Armani and Mephibosheth, the 2 sons. I'm so confused. It says the king spared Mephibosheth, and now it's saying, but the king took Armani and Mephibosheth, the 2 sons of Aiah's daughter. Okay, so it's a different Mephibosheth. Rizpah, who she had borne to Saul, together with 5 sons of Saul's daughter Merib, who had been born to Adriel, son of Barzillai, the Mahalathite. He handed them over to the Gibeonites, who killed them and exposed their bodies on a hill before the Lord. Oof, this is just rough, man. Man, the Old Testament can be rough. All 7 of them fell together. They were put to death during the first days of the harvest, just as the barley harvest was beginning. And maybe I should note that, I don't think that Jesus' times were necessarily less barbaric, but we're just hearing the story of how Israel survived in ancient times, and the New Testament is less about Israel's survival, and it's more about the coming of Jesus, right? And of course, Rome is the thing throughout all of the New Testament, so it's kind of a stalemate. I think it's also, I've never thought about this, but the New Testament is written over a much shorter time frame, where Genesis starts with the beginning of time, at least time as we know it, and then it, marches through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Moses, and Joshua, and Judges, and all of this stuff, and then through the prophets and David the prophets, and all that stuff. It's just it would be interesting to get like historians' point of view on when they think the last book of the Old Testament was written. Yeah. And then when the first book, I know like Job and Genesis are probably the first ones written. Alright, so he handed over the Gibeonites who killed them and exposed them. All 7 of them fell together, and they were put to death during the first days of the harvest, just as the barley harvest was beginning. Rizpah, the daughter of Ai, took sackcloth and spread it out for herself on the rock from the beginning of the harvest till the rain poured down from the heavens on the bodies. She did not let the birds touch them by day or the wild animals by night. What a committed woman. And when David was told what Ai's daughter Rizpah, Saul's concubine, had done, he went and took the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan from the citizens of Jabesh Gilead. They had stolen their bodies from the public square of Bethshan, where the Philistines had hung them after they struck Saul down in Gilboa. And David brought the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan from there, and the bones of those who had been killed and exposed were gathered up. They buried the bones of Saul and his son Jonathan in the tomb of Saul's father Kish at Zelah and Benjamin, and did everything the king commanded. After that, God answered prayer in behalf of the land. Wars against the Philistines. Once again, there was a battle between the Philistines and Israel, and David went down with his men to fight against the Philistines, and he became exhausted. And Ishbai Benob, one of the descendants of Raha, was whose bronze spearhead weighed 300 shekels, and who was armed with a new sword, said he would kill David. Ishbai Benob. So this guy Ishbai Benob is thirsty for David's blood, I guess. But Abishai, son of Zeruiah, came to David's rescue, and he struck the Philistine down and killed him. Then David's men swore to him, saying, "Never again will you go out with us in battle, so that the lamp of Israel will not be extinguished." So you just see how, like, this isn't the first time, of course, that people have been protected of David's life, but it sounds like it's happening even more now. In the course of time, there was another battle with the Philistines at Gob, and at that time, Sibbecai Hushathite killed Saph, one of the descendants of Rapha. In another battle with the Philistines at Gob, Elhanan, son of Jair, the Bethlehemite, killed the brother of Goliath the Gittite, who had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's rod. In still another battle, which took place at Gath, there was a huge man with 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot. Wow. 24 in all, and he also was descended from Rapha, and when he taunted Israel, sounds a lot like Goliath, does it not? Jonathan, son of Shimei, David's brother, killed him. Wow. That must be like a younger brother. Talk about kindred spirits, right? These four were the descendants of Rapha and Gath. They fell at the hands of David and his men. Chapter 22, David's song of praise. David sang to the Lord the words of this song when the Lord delivered him from the hand of his enemies and from the hand of Saul. It's interesting that we're still talking about Saul like this, but yeah, this must be still pretty fresh. David sang to the Lord the words of this song when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all of his enemies and from the hand of Saul. Simultaneously, like, Absalom has already done his thing. He has already had an affair with Bathsheba and all of that stuff with Uriah. I don't know exactly why we're putting a psalm here at the end of Samuel that pertains to David's joy about being delivered from Saul. But here it is. So let's read this song. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge. My shield and the horn of my salvation. He is my stronghold, my refuge, and my Savior. From violent people you save me. I call to the Lord, who is worthy of praise, and has been saved from my have been saved from my enemies. The waves of death swirled around me, the torrents of destruction overwhelmed me, the cords of the grave coiled around me, the snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called to the Lord, I called out to my God. From the temple he heard my voice, my cry came to his ears. The earth trembled and quaked. The foundations of the heavens shook. They trembled because he was angry. Smoke rose from his nostrils. Consuming fire came from his mouth. Burning coals blazed out of it. He parted the heavens and came down. Dark clouds were under his feet. He mounted the cherubim and flew. He soared on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his canopy around him, and the dark rain clouds of the sky. Out of the brightness of his presence, bolts of lightning blazed. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemy with great bolts of lightning. He routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed, and the foundation of the earth laid bare. This really reminds me of another psalm that David wrote. He scattered them with arrows. He parted the sky and came down. I want to say it's 141 maybe. Yeah, it's 144. Praise to be to the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. And then it says, part your heavens, verse 5, Lord, and come down, touch the mountains so that they smoke, sending forth lightning, and scatter your enemies, shoot your arrows and rout them. Similar verbiage we got here. Out of the brightness of his presence, bolts of lightning blazed forth. The Lord thundered from heaven. The voice of the Most High resounded. He shot his arrows and scattered the enemy. With great bolts of lightning, he routed them. The valleys of the sea were exposed. The foundations of the earth laid bare. And at the rebuke of the Lord, at the blast of bolt from his nostrils, he reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foes who was too strong for me. They confronted me in the day of my disaster, but the Lord was my support. He brought me out into a spacious place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. The Lord has dealt with me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanliness of my hands, he has rewarded me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord. I am not guilty of turning from God. So this psalm must have been written before Uriah ever happened. I mean, it's a beautiful psalm. All his laws are before me. I have not turned away from his decrees. I've been blameless before him and have kept myself from sin. The Lord has rewarded me according to my righteousness, according to my cleanliness in his sight. To the faithful, you show yourself faithful. To the blameless, you show yourself blameless. To the pure, you show yourself pure. To the devious, you show yourself shrewd. You save the humble, but your eyes are on the haughty and bring them low. You, Lord, are my lamp. The Lord turns my darkness into light. With your help, I can advance against a troop. With my God, I can scale a wall. As for God, his way is perfect. The Lord's word is flawless. His shields all who takes refuge in him. For who is God besides the Lord, and who is the rock except for our God? It is God who arms me with strength and keeps my way secure. He makes my feet like the feet of the deer. He causes me to stand on the heights. He trains my hands for battle. My arms can bend a bow of bronze. You make your saving help my shield. Your help has made me great. You provide a broad path for my feet so that my ankles do not give way. I pursued my enemies and crushed them. I did not turn back till they were destroyed. I crushed them completely, and they could not rise. They fell beneath my feet. You armed me with strength for battle. You humbled my adversaries before me. You made my enemies turn their backs in flight, and I destroyed my foes. They cried for help, but there was no one to save them. To the Lord, but he did not answer. I beat them as fine as the dust of the earth. I pounded and trampled them like mud in the streets. You have delivered me from the attacks of the peoples. You preserve me as the head of nations. People I did not know now serve me. Foreigners cower before me. As soon as they hear of me, they obey me. Man, my birds are going crazy. What is the deal? Guys, just fucking chill. Do you understand how disruptive that is? We'll just take you with me then. I'm trying to let them be back there because I think it's kind of a cool plus to just the video situation, but they're gonna be that loud, like I don't know what to do. For who is God besides the Lord, and who is the rock except our God? It is God who arms me for strength and keeps my way secure. He makes my feet like the feet of the deer. He trains my hands for battle. My arms can bend a bow of bronze. I think I already read that. I crushed them completely, and they could not rise. They fell beneath my feet. You armed me with strength for battle. You humbled my adversaries before me. You made my enemies turn their backs in flight, and I destroyed my foes. They cried for help, but there was no one to save them. To the Lord, but he did not answer. I beat them as fine as the dust of the earth, that I pounded and trampled them in the mud of the streets. You have delivered me from the attacks of peoples. You have preserved me as the head of nations. People I did not know now serve me, and foreigners cower before me. As soon as they hear of me, they obey me. They all lose heart. They come trembling from their strongholds. The Lord lives. Praise be to my rock. Exalted be my rock, the God, the rock, my Savior. He is the God who avenges me, who puts the nations under me, who sets me from my enemies, who sets me free from my enemies. You exalted me above my foes. From the valiant man you rescued me. Therefore I will praise you, Lord, among the nations. I will sing the praises of your name. He gives his king great victories. He shows unfailing kindness to his anointed and to David and his descendants forever. These are the last words of David, the inspired utterances of David, son of Jesse, the utterances of the man exalted by the Most High, the man anointed by the God of Jacob, the hero of Israel's songs. The Spirit of the Lord spoke through me. His word was on my tongue. The God of Israel spoke. The Rock of Israel said to me, when one rules over me in righteousness, when he rules in the fear of God, he is like the light of the morning at sunrise on a cloudless morning. Wow, what a cool description for somebody who is focused on God, with the way they live their life. I'll just read it again. When one rules over people in righteousness, he rules in the fear of God. He is like the light of morning at sunrise on a cloudless morning. Doesn't get much more beautiful than that, right? Like the brightness after rain that brings grass from the earth. If my house were not right with God, surely he would not have made me an everlasting covenant, arranged and secured in every part. Surely he would not bring to fruition my salvation and grant me my every desire. But evil men are all to be cast aside like thorns, which are not gathered with the hand. Whoever touches thorns uses a tool of iron at the shaft of a spear, and they are burned up where they lie. David's mighty warriors. These are the names of David's mighty warriors. Josheb-Basshebeth the Techamite was chief of 3. He raised a spear against 800 men whom he killed in one encounter. So there's going to be a list of just amazing people, amazing warriors that were in David's army. David's Mighty Men is how this is often titled. And it makes me think of like the Expendables with Sylvester Stallone. It just has this growing number of like scoundrel men who are just lethal in their own unique way, each one of them. So this guy raised a spear against 800 men whom he killed in one encounter. Next to him was Eleazar, son of Dodai, the Ahothite. As one of the 3 mighty warriors, he was with David when they taunted the Philistines gathered at Pasdammim for battle, and then the Israelites retreated. But Eleazar stood his ground and struck down the Philistines till he had grown tired and froze to the sword. Wow. Okay. The Lord brought about a great victory that day. The troops returned to Eleazar, but only to strip the dead. Next to him was Shammah, son of Agi, the Hararite. When the Philistines banded together at the place where there was a field full of lentils, Israel's troops fled from them. But Shammah took his stand in the middle of the field. He defended it and struck the Philistines down, and the Lord brought about a great victory. During harvest time, 3 of the 30 chief warriors came down to David at the cave of Adullam, while a band of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. At that time, David was in the stronghold, and the Philistine garrison was at Bethlehem. David longed for water and said, "Oh, that someone would give me a drink of water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem." So the 3 mighty warriors broke through the Philistine lines, drew water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem, and carried it back to David. But he refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out before the Lord. Far be it from me, Lord to do this. He said, Is this not the blood of men who went to risk their lives? And David would not drink it. So just to summarize that, I'm reading pretty fast here. David's talking about the best water in Bethlehem and how he misses it and wants to drink it. And some of his mighty men overhear it, and they're like, we're going to give David some of that sweet water. And they fight through enemy lines and get him some of that water. And then David values their lives so much, he's like, how can I drink this? Only God is worthy of that. Such were the exploits of 3 mighty warriors, though, and their devotion to David, right? Abishai, the brother of Joab, son of Zeruiah, was chief of the 3. He raised his spear against 300 men, whom he killed, and so he became as famous as the 3. Was he not held in great honor? Greater honor than the 3? He became their commander, even though he was not included among them. And Benaniah, son of Jehoiada, a valiant fighter from Kabzeel, performed great exploits. He struck down Moab's 2 mightiest warriors. He also went down into a pit on a snowy day and killed a lion. And a whole book's written about that, even though I don't think I might have read like 1 chapter. Killed a lion in a pit on a snowy day. He snatched the spear. Also the Egyptian, and he struck down a huge Egyptian. Although the Egyptian had a spear in his hand, Benaniah went against him with a club. He snatched the spear from the Egyptian's hand and killed him with his own spear. Such were the exploits of Benaniah, son of Jehoiada. He too was as famous as the 3 mighty warriors. He was held in greater honor than any of the 30, but he was not included among the 3, and David put him in charge of the bodyguard. Among the 30 were Asahel, the brother of Joab, Elhanan, son of Dodo from Bethlehem, Shammah the Harodite, Eliki the Harodite, Heliz the Paltite, Ira the Ikesh from Tekoa, Abiasar from Ananath, Sibbecai the Hushathite, Zalman the Ahohite, Maharai the Netophite, Helb son of Bana the Netoshathite, Ithai son of Rabbi from Gibeah in Benjamin, Benoni the Parathonite, Hiddai from the ravines of Gash, and Abi Alban the Arbathite, Asmaneth the Burhamite, and Elba the Shalbanite, the sons of Jathan, Jonathan son of Shammah, and the Hararite, and Aham the Harodite, Ethelaet son of Ahazbai the Machathite, and Eliam son of Asaphiel the Gilonite, and Hezronite the Carmelite, Perai the Arbite, Ilgai of Nethan from Soba, and the son of Hagri, Zelek the Ammonite, and Naharai the Barathite, the armor-bearer of Joab, son of Zeruiah, Ira the Ethrite, and Gareb the Ithrite, and Uriah the Hittite. There were 37 in all, and Uriah is listed in the mighty men. That's pretty sobering. Ahithophel was also listed, and he was key, if you remember. Actually, he gave, like, from what I remember, I think he gave Absalom some really good advice, and Absalom didn't take it. So that's a complicated guy right there. David enrolls the fighting men. This is the last chapter of 2 Samuel. David enrolls the fighting men. Again, the anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he incited David against them, saying, "Go and take a census of Israel and Judah." So the king said to Joab and the army commanders with him, "Go throughout the tribes of Israel from Dan to Beersheba and enroll the fighting men, so that I may know how many there are." But Joab replied to the king, "May the Lord your God multiply his troops 100 times over, and may the eyes of my lord the king see it. But why does my lord the king want to do this thing?" So once again, Joab is such a complex character, because Joab's giving David decent advice here. Like, you don't need to know how the exact numbers. Why don't you just trust God? To me, that's what Joab seems to be implying to David, that he doesn't need to take this census because he should just trust God. The king's word, however, overruled Joab and the army commanders, so they left the presence of the Lord to enroll the fighting men of Israel. And after crossing the Jordan, they camped near Aurora, south of the town in the gorge, and they went through Gad and on to Jazer. They went to Gilead in the region of Taphatim, Hodshai, and on to Dan, Jun, and around towards Sidon. Then they went toward the fortress of Tyre and all the towns of the Hivites and the Canaanites. Finally, they went on to Beersheba in the Negev of Judah. And after they had gone through the entire land, they came back to Jerusalem at the end of 9 months and 20 days. Joab reported the number of the fighting men to the king. In Israel, there were 800,000 able-bodied men who could handle a sword, and in Judah 500,000. 100,000. David was conscience-stricken after he had counted the fighting men, and he said to the Lord, "I have sinned greatly in what I have done. Now, the Lord, I beg you, take away the guilt of your servant. I have done a very foolish thing." So David was conscience-stricken, and he's trying to make good on it now. Before David got up the next morning, the word of the Lord came to Gad the prophet, David's seer. So Gad is now the thing. I guess David or Nathan is dead? I don't know. "Go and tell David, this is what the Lord says. I'm giving you 3 options. Choose one of them for me to carry out against you." So Gad went to David and said to him, "Shall there come on you 3 years of famine in your land, or 3 months of fleeing from your enemies while they pursue you, or 3 days of plague in your land? Now then, think it over and decide how I should answer the one who sent me." I would choose 3 days of plague. I would just rather go through 3 days of utter hell and have it over with than what do we got? 3 months of fleeing from your enemies? That sounds horrible. And 3 years of famine? No, thank you. Just give me a quick plague and get it over with. David said to Gad, "I am in deep distress. Let us fall into the hands of the Lord, for his mercy is great, but do not let me fall into the human hands." Yeah. So the Lord sent a plague on Israel. Oh, there we go. God agrees with me, at least. If we believe God is gracious, God agrees with me. I certainly agree with God here. Oh man, what is the plague? So the Lord sent a plague on Israel from the morning until the end of the time designated, and 70,000 of the people from Dan to Beersheba died. Oof, I wonder what the plague was. When the angel stretched out his hand to destroy Jerusalem, the Lord relented concerning the disaster and said to the angel who was afflicting the people, "Enough, withdraw your hand." The angel of the Lord was then at the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. When David saw the angel who was striking down the people, he said to the Lord, "I have sinned. I, the shepherd, have done wrong. These are but sheep. What have they done? Let your hand fall on me and my family." David burns an altar. On that day, Gad came to David and to him and said to him, "Go up and build an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite." So David went up as the Lord had commanded through Gad. When Araunah looked and saw the king and his officials coming toward him, he went out and bowed down before the king with his face to the ground. Araunah said, "Why has my lord the king come to his servant to buy your threshing floor?" David answered, "So I can build an altar to the Lord, that the plague on the people may be stopped." Araunah said to David, "Let my lord the king take whatever he wishes and offer it up. Here are the oxen for the burnt offering, and here are the threshing sledges and ox yokes for the wood. Your majesty," Araunah, "gives all this to the king." Araunah also said to him, "May the Lord your God accept you." But the king replied to Araunah, "No, I insist on paying you for it, and I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing." So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen and paid 50 shekels of silver for them. And David built an altar to the Lord, sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then the Lord answered his prayer on behalf of the land, and the plague on Israel was stopped. What an interesting end to Samuel. It ends with David taking a census, then repenting, and still having to choose a punishment. He defers to God. God chooses the plague. And then David builds an altar, kind of begging God to relent. So it ends with this moment of worship, and that's kind of powerful. And also kind of that psalm is pretty powerful too, right? That psalm, chapter 22. And it says David's last words, but we know we're going to hear more about David soon. And we're going to hear about Solomon soon. So, yeah, I think that's it. A little bit shorter reading today, but I'll look forward to starting in 1 Kings very soon. Thanks a lot. Catch you later, guys.